Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to another edition of I Was Supposed to Have a Baby's Talking Away the Taboo. We are here tonight. We're going to be bringing on Nasya Miller, who is she's actually really remarkable. She's going to be talking all about her personal experience with egg freezing, the emotions that she went through, like deciding it, the emotions that she went through while she was going through the process, all of the pieces. Now that she's finished with the process, she's going to walk us through the entire thing from start to finish. And I'm really just so grateful for her for being here and doing this. So let's bring her on. Grab her. Okay, hold on, guys. I have a bunch of questions that people have already put into the chat. Actually, people have messaged me already. If anybody has any other questions, you can drop them in the chat or you can put them here. We at I Was Supposed to Have a Baby, we've been having these discussions. We're spending this week talking about different aspects of egg freezing, and we've kind of been building to this point as we're waiting for Nasya to join now. We've been building to this point of where we're discussing a lot about the communal pressure, the societal pressure now that people are feeling, pressure, and also the opportunity actually to freeze eggs. This is technology that hasn't existed previously. And this is an incredible opportunity for people who want this, but that we also shouldn't, excuse me, let me try that again. Let's try English here. That we shouldn't shame the people who are not interested, who can't do it, who it's not feasible for them for whatever reason. And so that's an important piece of this process too. Hi, Nasya, how are you?
Hi.
Let me just finish with this introduction real quick. And so we want to make sure that we're holding space for everyone here, regardless of what place they are on their journey, on their fertility journey, that this, talking about egg freezing, this might be an option for you. This might not be an option for you for a million reasons. And whatever you decide, that's absolutely okay. But we are thrilled, thrilled, thrilled. I think I said that. I said that 3 times. I did. To have Nasya here tonight to talk about her experience. And so, hello.
Hi. I know we spoke on the phone, but I'm just gonna, my name's actually pronounced
I
Nasya,
can't.
which
I,
is, it's totally, it's my name. It's not you. I promise. I just like,
I am so glad that you said that because I actually realized before you get on, I realized that was the one thing that you and I didn't talk about. I didn't make sure, and I'm usually so good at that. I'm usually so good. Okay, tell me one more time because I want to make sure that I get it
Okay,
correctly.
my name is pronounced Nasya, and so my
Nasya.
cameras just
Okay,
saying,
perfect.
yeah, like
Perfect.
a miracle of God in
Yes,
Hebrew, which is
yes, yes.
kind of a lovely conversation starter for our conversation that we're having tonight,
No,
actually.
1,000%. I actually have a relative named, well, he's Israeli, so he pronounces it Nes,
Mm,
not Nace, but
yeah,
Nasya. Okay.
right,
Thank
exactly.
you. I'm so glad that you mentioned it. Perfect. Nasya, please introduce yourself. Just give people a general idea of who you are, what your background is, and like just spend a couple of minutes and, tell us about your family and like lead us up to the point of where you like first heard about egg freezing. So like get us from, the beginning to that point.
Okay, great. Also, it's so nice to see your face and to meet you in this way
Thank
after
you.
talking for months and months.
Correct.
Okay, so born and raised in Chicago, was placing myself in the world, and I'm one of 6 kids. Grew up in a modern Orthodox home in Chicago. I'm going to Jewish day school my whole life, like co-ed Jewish day school, and and what was studied in Israel. I'll just give like a few like just like
Yeah, yeah.
moments. Like studied in Israel, went to college in New York, did a joint program with Stern and FIT, was doing interior design, and it was a studio art major. At the time, I remember in ninth grade, we had to write a paper. We had to like interview somebody about a profession we wanted to do. And I interviewed a family friend who's an interior designer. My parents are both entrepreneurs, so I grew up in a home of entrepreneurs. And that's all I knew. And I knew, okay, I'm going to start a business. I'm going to start my own business. Interviewed an interior designer and saw that she was a really present, active mother. And she had this like creative outlet that she could do and loved, and had her own business. I was like, that's what I'm going to do. Be married by 21 the latest. Gonna start having kids. Gonna have my business. Perfect. Had it all planned out until college hit, and then finished college. And soon after, I worked for an interior designer, and then I shifted into and I wasn't quite hitting. I really wanted to help people, and I have a really connected and intentional relationship with my own Judaism and my connection with Hashem, with God, divine. I don't know who your audience is, but all those,
All
whatever, fill in,
the audience
fill
is
in.
correct.
Right.
The
So
audience is everyone.
fill
Yep.
in your blank. And and so I started working in the nonprofit sector, in the Jewish nonprofit sector, doing a lot of work around supporting people around building their identity, Jewish identity, but also like getting to know themselves. And did that for a while in a bunch of different places. Um, and I was living in New York, moved back to Chicago. I'm just like trying to like just give some timeline. And then I was facilitating. I was doing experience design and group facilitation, and doing like experiential education trips, and again supporting people on a lot of identity work. And then that's when I was like, there's something else here for me. There's something else here for me. And kind of through a bunch of my different superpowers and stops along the way, it landed for me that I really wanted to be a coach and do coaching work. And so that led my journey to starting my own business and becoming a relationship systems coach. And while doing all of that, I was engaged, just like relational wise, I was engaged 8 years ago. And then after we broke off our engagement, I went really deep into my own personal work. And that also kind of started that trend on where I wanted to go around this next profession and where my business is now. And I'll tell you that I didn't hear about egg freezing, honestly, up until, I don't know, like 2 years ago or something like that, like just not too long ago, where oh, you know what? I remember talking to my gynecologist a few years ago, and I said, should I start thinking about this? And she said, not until you're 35. You don't have to think about it until you're 35. And so for a few years, I just was like, okay, then I won't think about it. And then I started hearing a little bit of trickling here and there, but not really like picking up so much on it. And like, no, I'm good. I'm just going to keep trudging along, and I'm going to find my
And
person
tell
soon.
people,
Yeah.
are you comfortable telling people at what point that you asked your OBGYN about it? At what
I
age you were?
think I think I was probably 29,
Okay.
but I didn't really know that much about it. I don't know what got me to ask. I'll tell you, I know that I plan and I hope and I'd like to have a lot of children. I'm come from a big family. I love my big family. And so I was like, okay, I have to like think this through. And I could share more about like a little bit of like my medical history, but just like wanting to be thoughtful and fertility, you never know in the land of fertility. And so I was trying to be thoughtful about it. And then I remember I was in Israel 2 years ago in the winter, and I happened to be like, my friends were giving me a ride to Jerusalem from Tel Aviv, and their other friend happened to be in the car. And their other friend was coming from her one of her blood tests, one of her while she's getting her egg freezing process, and she was just like talking about it, and it was like very open, and we had a long ride,
Wow.
and it was just like, oh, whoa, interesting. And she was just sharing all these things about her experience.
Wow.
And I came home from that trip. That was 2 winters ago. I came home and I was like, huh, think I should start thinking about this. Like it just kind of landed for me at the exact same time, really totally like synchronistic.
Yep.
Yeah, you got that?
Synchronously, whatever. Well, yeah,
Synchronously.
yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say coincidentally, but it's not
Yep.
coincidentally. That's why. My sister Danielle died 18 years ago. My parents started a foundation in her name, Nasya Miller Foundation, and they recently, as of like 2 years ago, decided to shift their focus to supporting women educationally, not just women, Jewish communities with education and starting with education and then resources and finances for single women freezing their eggs.
Wow.
We had not had a conversation about it.
Wow.
And my parents, my mom had just started doing a lot of research for the foundation. And she was like, this is not pressure for you at all. We hadn't really talked about it. But I had just started thinking about it because of this
Right.
conversation just a few weeks before. And then she had mentioned that this person that she spoke to said, a really great age to do is between 30 and 33.
Right.
And so I was like, oh, I got to do this. This is like, okay, now I really have to do this. And suddenly I felt a little bit of pressure, not from them, but just from like, oh, if this is something I want to do, I want to do it sooner than later was kind of this energy I got. And that was that. I'll stop there. That's the point of, of that story.
Okay. So now, I mean, so now tell me, I mean, shockingly, I mean, because I hear from lots of different people across the community, people who are religious, people who are not religious, and egg freezing kind of has been this, like, exactly as you said, kind of like has been these whispers that has been happening over the last number of years. The technology has now improved. Um, it's, it's something that's attainable. We're going to talk about the finances in a second, but it's something that's attainable in the sense that they gynecologists, OBGYNs are having conversations about it. You hear about it in the public sphere. People hear about it in the public sphere. But the question I have for you is in the religious community, you come from a religious Jewish community, from a firm community, from that kind of family. What, like, hearing about like your parents like
Yeah.
switching gears in terms of the foundation, but what were you hearing, like what were you worried about it, what were you thinking about it? Did you feel that there was any pressure in terms of like from a dating perspective? Like can you give us sort of the bird's eye view of beyond your family, what was everybody else talking to you about this, and what were your emotions at the time?
Okay. I'll tell you at the beginning. So first of all, I am a part of a Jewish, like a really strong Jewish community. And at the same time, I have a lot of networks and a lot of like peripheral social communities that also are kind of along the spectrum of like Jewish to not, a lot of my coaching communities and things like that. So I'm a part of a lot of different worlds, but I will share kind of within the Jewish. And so within, I would say within a lot of my friend circles that are outside the like religious observant Jewish community, I actually do suddenly have friends that as I started talking about it, people are like, oh, I did that, or I know that,
Wow.
or I did that. So it really did start populating a lot. And like friends are like, oh, I'm doing it now, or things like that. So I actually did feel like outside of the like the modern Orthodox community, it was like, oh, I was a part of something that was really happening for a lot of people. And I will say that the conversation, I'll say like my community kind of in Chicago, and I could talk about that. In Israel, it is like talked about. Like it is not
Really?
a taboo conversation.
In
And
the
in the
from
sense,
community, in the
yeah,
religious community?
in the religious communities, like I remember talking about it with my sister, and she was like, "Oh yeah, my friend, sure, happy to talk to you about it." I'm like, "She did it, yeah, a few years ago," and also I think it's not as taboo, and also it's we could talk about this more later,
Yep.
but it's a really good like they kind of encourage it, like it's really reasonable there. They give citizens like a certain amount of of eggs to freeze, and it's like very reasonable for citizens.
Wow.
And so it is a little bit of a different conversation there. In my community in Chicago, it is not really talked about, but I will tell you that we can talk about my own journey. At the beginning, I was not talking about it with anyone. I was working through shame and embarrassment and guilt and like all these
Why?
stories.
Okay,
Okay.
why?
Okay.
Why?
Um, I don't know what was spoken about, but there definitely for me was an underlying story of this is not the place I should be. Like, how am I having to think about this? Like, there was this story of like, how am I single in my 30s and now I have to be considering this? I did not think I was going to be here. And I don't have any, and like, I'm not currently like dating anybody seriously. And so, like, I have to be thinking about this. And at first, it felt like, I have to be. Like, it didn't feel like people were like, oh, but it's so amazing that there's this technology and how incredible that you have this opportunity. And I was like, I will get to a place of feeling empowered. I will get to a place of gratitude. But right now, at the beginning, I was really struggling with yeah, like, how did I get here? This is not the life I thought I would have. This is not the choices I thought I would have to be making. I definitely had some, yeah, some like shame and embarrassment around um, that this is the choice that I have to make. That is not how I feel today, but that definitely was. And I was very conscious on sharing that with people that I was really close to. And I share a lot of vulnerable things on my social media. So, but when it's ready,
Totally.
and so I was like, I am not ready to share it. I feel so much shame around this. And so I just, like, around close friends, um, and mentors, I would start sharing the pain I was experiencing around this. So yeah.
And I want to say that um Nasya and I spoke beforehand, and I asked her specifically. I said, "Tell me what are the topics that are off limits, because I want to make sure that I make you feel comfortable in what we're talking about here." Because everything that you're describing, that you've just described right now, in terms of that shame, that
Yeah.
embarrassment, is something that most of the singles, most of the people that I speak to, that's what they're carrying. And I think we need to talk about that more. And I was so grateful to you that you said that you would be open to speaking about that publicly, because this is an idea that people carry with them, that they're doing this because there's something wrong, and that there's something wrong with them, that they haven't yet gotten married, and like, through no fault of their own. Like, I don't think, in the same way that infertility is not anyone's fault, there's nothing that anyone does to cause infertility, there's nothing that anybody does to cause a pregnancy loss. And here, there's nothing that anybody, I mean, we could talk for hours about, what people need to do in terms of being emotionally healthy to be part of a relationship. But that's not what this is about. This is about, like, being in a circumstance in life where you just, life didn't turn out the way you expect. And I hear from so many people this blockage almost about how they can't consider egg freezing because it's they would then have to acknowledge the fact that they're not in the place that they wanted to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And such an and the process is very intimate. And to be, yeah, to be like thinking about this and making these choices on my own. Yeah, it was definitely like, there's a lot. It's very vulnerable. Um, I was very conscious to allow myself to feel those things, and only because I really let myself talk about it and feel it do I really believe that that's where then I started shifting into a different relationship with around this choice. And I was very adamant on, I'm not doing this if I'm feeling the pressure. I'm not doing this if I feel like I have to. I'm not doing this if I feel pressure in any way around something negative. Sorry, my camera keeps falling a little bit. Um, but that was I was very, 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 very conscious of that. And so I started doing a lot of things to like prepare myself, but I knew that I wasn't gonna actually like go through the process until I reached that energy.
I think there's something very beautiful about that. I think that, just that process in general, many people going through anything in their life, right? Anything that might be difficult, anything that's new, anything that potentially is scary for whatever the reason is, like to jump in with 2 feet without really thinking about how you're going to react and getting yourself emotionally prepared for it, I think is a bad idea for anyone for any kind of something new.
Yeah.
Um,
I also was like very much like, okay, I want to like I felt very connected to my eggs throughout the process as like potential life and just thinking about ideas, businesses, like things that we create. It's like it's potential and it's all in us. And eggs is one feature of potential that lives in all of us. And
love
I
that.
was just like, okay, so here I have this vessel. And I'll tell you that it actually called me up in a big way because I have a really strong spiritual practice and I have a really strong emotional practice that throughout my life I've just had a little bit. I'm like all three air signs. Like my coaching is very much in like a grounded space, but like it's about a lot of emotional stuff. It's about intellectual mind. It's about spiritual. And my relationship with my physical body, like I like sacrifice eating if I like am in a good groove journaling or something
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that or whatever it is. And like I've just never I'm active outside, but like working out has always been really hard for me. So long story short, if I'm it it really called me up to be like, okay, I have a vessel that's holding potential. How do I want this vessel to hold this? And really creating
Wow.
kind of like a different relationship with my body and with what I was holding. And I was like, okay, so these are potential, these are eggs that are potential. They might become life, they might not, but I'm going to treat them like each one is. And I was really almost like nurturing the eggs along the way as like potential children. That felt really resonant for me. It helped me really like be really selfless and I just took care of my body, but it didn't feel like it was for me in a certain way. It felt like it was for my future children. And
Wow.
it was a very powerful it's continued to be a very powerful experience.
Wow. Wow. Okay, so I want to go back to the practical of like, you making the decision that you're going to move forward with this and walk us through the process. And then I want to come back to the spiritual pieces and the things that got you through
Yeah,
emotionally, the rigor and the gruel and all of the other pieces that are difficult. This is not an
yeah,
easy process
no,
in any way. But now, okay, so take us back. So you were grappling, should I, shouldn't I? Speaking to lots of different people
right,
and coming to terms with where you were
yeah,
in your life at that moment, like that helped to bring you to the place of where you were set, ready to say, okay, I'm ready.
yeah.
So then what?
Okay, so a few things. Number one, I had this weird inkling like I'm gonna be doing this. This was like even before I really made a choice. I was like in November in Israel. I don't know why. There's just something that like kind of hit for me. I didn't really say anything to anyone. It just was there. So like okay, I just started taking the next steps forward. I started researching. I like called my insurance company and researched doctors that I could even just start getting the initial information. Called my friend Alana who works at a fertility clinic. She's in Colorado, but she works out for she's worked in New York for years. They just moved to Colorado, and I was like, okay, Alana, like, what are the things I need to know? I talked to my mom about maybe she had some contacts for me. So I just started having conversations with people, just started getting in the world of like, what do I even need to know? And I'll tell you, I did not know anything. Like, I remember being like, okay, hold on. I remember when I first started thinking about it, I was like, am I either choosing to freeze my eggs or take a chance of having kids? Like, I didn't even know that it's like, no, we just scoop up that month's thing, reserve. And this is what, like, now I understand the details of what's happening in my body. But it's so crazy that I didn't even know what was happening in my own body. every month.
Yep.
And so I just was like, hold on. So once that happened, I was like, okay, wait, hold on. It's just going to take that month. And then just started to understand the world of it, just talk to a lot of people. And then got my initial AMH, got my initial blood work, did that in Chicago, knowing there's a big
I just
chance.
want to explain. Just
Yeah.
want to explain. So Nace just making reference to there's blood work that your either your OBGYN or a reproductive endocrinologist, the person who will end up doing the this specific treatment, the egg freezing. There's lots of blood work that you do, but one specific test that talks about and gives you an indication as to what your ovarian reserve is at that moment, meaning how many eggs and what the quality are,
Yeah.
quality is,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah.
It's a very broad. It's not anything definitive. It's a very broad term, but it gives you a sense of what's going
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. And I will share with you that right before I did that, I went to my my annual gynecologist appointment. I'll tell you that a number of years ago, when my ex fiance and I were engaged and we were going through some really tough stuff, I ended up in the hospital with a ruptured ovarian cyst. It was
Oh
the
God.
first time I was in the hospital, the first time this ever surfaced, and I truly believe it was a very emotionally driven experience because after I went on birth control because they weren't sure if I had endometriosis or
Oh
PCOS,
my
like
goodness.
all these different things. Thank God I don't. And after we broke our engagement, they started getting smaller and smaller until they went away.
Wow.
And over the last 7 years, I am not on. I like went off of birth control. I really wanted to be in my own body, my own flow, and really deeply working on my hormones, acupuncture all the time. So I've been taking care of my body in that way for a while. And my biggest fear was like, what if there's a cyst and what will
Right.
happen in this process? And so when I went to my annual, I asked for an ultrasound, even though like she wouldn't have given me that because I had been like good and clean for years. And I had felt like really in my best, like physically, emotionally, mentally, like, wow, like, for that story of feeling the shame and the embarrassment, like and feel like it's such a blessing that I got this life that I would never have planned for myself. So with all this the pieces that come with this, there's also so much joy that I have
Yep.
and gratitude. And so I'll tell you, when I went to the gynecologist's office, we did an ultrasound and they found a cyst. And I remember leaving deflated. And I was like, I wanted to do it specifically knowing that I want to do my egg freezing. She's like, we would never have known it was there because we wouldn't have done the ultrasound because these things come and
Right.
go. This doesn't necessarily have to be an issue. But now
Right.
that we saw it, we have to watch it. And then when I did my like a consultation with a doctor that I didn't know about fertility, she said, we will not do this process if you have a cyst because
Correct.
there's certain
Can be
it
dangerous.
can
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
dangerous. So I was like deflated and I felt like my body totally betrayed me. I was like, I feel like I'm at my best and now I want to do this thing and now what? And it was really, really tough. Um, so one thing that I started doing right away is I started changing the way that I process stress. Feeling like I hold a lot of anxiety and stress, like in my stomach, like just that's how I've been over time. And just like really working through, like, okay, so if I don't want to hold so much stress, like not saying that this is the reason I have them, but just for
Right.
myself, I started just like practicing, like, okay, for my body, I'm just gonna like watch it flow out of me and not stay in that kind of anxiety place in my stomach area. And so that was another thing I also really took on in just the preparation of just like how I want to treat my body and like maybe that will help. My mom was like, okay, so you're prone to cysts. Like we were like, okay, so like how
Right.
do we create a different relationship with this? So it doesn't have to be bad.
Right.
It doesn't have to be something that because they're not necessarily dangerous. They come and go for people all
Correct.
the time.
Correct.
Long story short, just to like spoiler alert, my doctor in Israel was not concerned in the slightest and did the procedure with some cysts there, and there was, thank God, not any issues.
Thank
So
God.
that's just like
Yeah.
like a little. So like part of doing it there, and he was not concerned. Like I kept saying, "Are you sure you're not? Are you sure you're not concerned?" And he was like, I'm really not. They call it cysts there, but like it's just these things that are full. Like it's not. It's like he was just like there was. It didn't even like phase him. So, anyways,
Okay.
that's that.
So
Yeah,
you had, I just want to bring you back.
yeah.
So
Bring
you
me back.
decided, okay, I'm ready to go. I want to do this in Israel in November. Or so
I was like, I think I'm gonna do this. I started like joining some Facebook groups. I started reaching out to some people in Israel, but I was having a really hard time getting information about it there. But in my head, I'm like, okay, I'm going for the holiday time in the fall, and I'll stay a little bit.
but why? Okay, and because now we're
Okay.
having the finance discussion. Why did you
Oh,
want to do it in Israel versus here? Was it because you thought it was going to be cheaper?
yeah,
Or
yeah.
okay,
At the beginning, that's what it was. Totally. Yeah, yeah.
okay.
I
So
I like I like said like, oh, as a side note, I was like, oh, and that's meaningful. And I'm like, okay, long term, that feels like something I could do. But it definitely initially was because I thought it was going to be a lot less expensive. That's why I was, yeah,
okay, so that I want to say to everyone out there that there are actually many programs, I shouldn't say many, there are a number of programs in the United States currently that offer financial support for people who are doing it here. Um, Boneh
that's
Olam,
amazing.
Boneh Olam has one. A Time also gives grants for egg freezing. PUA gives grants for egg freezing. Many of the other fertility
Amazing.
organizations like Hasidah and Stardust and many of the organizations actually do give grants or loans to help with egg freezing, in addition to potentially, like I know Boneh Alam specifically works with specific fertility centers to help bring the cost down, and will give you money to help bring the cost down. So I want to just mention that, like, as we're, because your story ends in Israel, you ended up doing in
Yeah,
Israel. But I think it's really, and we're going to be talking about a bunch of these resources, not only on this live, but also on the page. Um,
amazing.
Okay, so
That's
walk
awesome.
us now through the actual process, because we got a number of questions, people asking, number one, like, what were the shots? How did the shots feel? How did you manage your shots alone? How did you manage the process alone, if you did? Like, people want to know practically about the process. Did you have side effects from the medicines, mood swings, physically, anything like that? Tell us about the process itself.
You're like bringing me back. Wow. Okay.
Sorry.
All right, let's do this. No, 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 no. It's good. It's really good. Okay. Okay. So I will say that I it ended up working out insanely magically that for the first like 4 days that I started my process, I my family was in Israel, so I actually for the first like I don't know like a few days, I had family around, which was such a blessing because oh my gosh, it was kind of crazy. I was trying to like align it perfectly with like my time that I was in Israel, etc. My doctor gave me some medicine to uh, make my periods stay a little longer because I couldn't get the shots exactly when they needed me to because you start the shots I think like the second day of your period usually.
Correct.
And
Correct.
so he gave me medicine to push it a little bit. The medicine made me so sick. And I had to then drive from Jerusalem to Herzliya, like an hour and a half. And thank God my mom was like, I'll wake up with you at 5 a.m. and we'll drive because I have to be there
Wow.
super early because you have to be at these like labs
Yep.
pretty early in the morning.
Yep.
So I'm so grateful to her. So that was
Amazing.
really, really huge. And that's I really needed people around at that time. Um, so the so and one of my best friends did this process. So she jumped on FaceTime with me the first time I did the shots, and my mom was around, and so I actually was like more scared of the shots than I anticipated. It like actually really freaked me out to like get it
Yep.
right, and the kind of like a very old part of me that I hadn't experienced in a long time that like wanted to ask all the questions to make sure I got it right. And by the way, doing this in Israel in like a foreign language with like I remember I had this like wonderful Muslim nurse who was like the person that like helped me over FaceTime, she explained how to do the shots and what
Amazing.
I'm going to do and what all the medicines were. It was a really
Amazing.
beautiful experience, actually, for me. It was wild. I'm like sitting and like trying to like figure this out. It was wild. Um, the shots were really not easy for me. So that first night, my mom and my best friend were there, and then the second night, my sister, oh, my cousin said, "You're gonna start having to do this alone. So why don't you, while you're in the presence of your family for the next few days, start doing it, but doing it with them around."
So smart. So smart.
So again, I resourced like everyone that I knew that did this, and I would just like keep talking to them. I just like really, and I just want to say, from the time that I like moved through the shame and the embarrassment piece to really empowering, I started talking about it everywhere. Talk about like in the Jewish community. I would sit at the Shabbos table like, so I am freezing my eggs soon, and people were like, oh, so we're talking about it. So I would literally be like at a my brother's softball game, or at a local whatever. And I would just be like, so I'm freezing my eggs, or I just got back from freezing my eggs. And I would just start talking about it. And, as soon as I was comfortable, people were like, oh, can I ask you questions about that? I'm not really familiar with that. And just kind of gave people this like space to just like to ask me things about it. So that's that piece. Now, yeah,
Wait, but hold on,
yeah.
because now that you like mentioned it, now I like, okay, what flipped that switch for you? What made you go from I'm not going to talk about this and this is like something that I'm still grappling with and all the things like the shame, the peace, to like now, everyone everyone under the sun is going to know about this. What was the thing that flipped the switch?
Yeah, I know. It wasn't like everyone under the sun is going to know about this. I was just like,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
want to be comfortable sharing this.
Yeah.
Okay. I really like let myself feel fully all the really hard, painful things. And then by letting myself, not rushing myself through it and not numbing those feelings, it moved through me. I can explain that more if you want me to. But I just let myself have time with it, and I let myself talk about it with people. And it got me to a place where I just like, you kind of like, I know people are really scared to feel really painful things because they think it's going to take over, but really, I really believe, and like through a lot of my work, is like when you really allow yourself the container to feel it, it like moves through, and it changes. And so when after that, I was like, okay, so if I want to choose to do this, like how do I want to be about this? And I started being really intentional about like, I want to talk about it. I don't want it to feel shameful. I want this to be something that I feel proud of. So that's what slowly started doing it. And then I would just started talking to people about their experiences. And then I was very adamant. I started talking about it with my brothers. I started talking about it when at my own family Shabbat table, and my brothers and I would just like start talking
Yeah.
about the things that were things we didn't really talk about in our house. And I'd be like, so I'm in like, and even with the shots, they were around for some of those. I was just like, this is not just a women's issue. And so the fact that they became comfortable with this is something that I feel really proud of being a part of, to be honest.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Amazing. No, there is a lot of research. I mean, you know this. There's a lot of research that says about any really strong emotion. I mean, we here, and I was supposed to have a baby, we deal a lot with pain, with stigma, with shame, with isolation, with just the grief. Like we deal with so much of that. And oftentimes there's this idea of like, well, if I don't think about it and I just like push it away, then it's going to be fine. And like, I don't have to think
right.
about it. I'll just like, and the reality is that there is so much research that says that with any difficult emotion, when you actually bring it out and when you actually think about it and talk about it and process it appropriately, then it's easier to move through.
Yeah,
It's it also it won't sit in your body like we know like that
right.
people like the way you were talking about like the cyst and the what you were
Yeah,
having before and you like when you finished with the relationship that seemed to go and that seemed that did go away.
yeah,
There is actual research out there that says that people like when we talk about like psychosomatic symptoms, if people have physical symptoms in their body for things that are going on emotionally, those things are real. They're
Yeah,
they're absolutely
100%.
real. And when you process and when you really deal with your emotions, it's a lot easier, both on your
Yeah,
body and on your brain.
totally.
Um, okay, so now take us back. So you're going
I'll
through
flip
the
back.
shots,
So I'm going to
going
the
through the
shots.
shots.
My parents left, and I honestly was still kind of freaking out about like the new. There's like different shots, and so one of them you have to like mix with a big needle and then put it in a
Yep,
small needle, and I was still like not feeling super comfortable. So I decided to stay in Jerusalem an extra day or two, and I stayed with my sister who works in a hospital, and she was just so comfortable around needles. And I was like, okay, you know what? I want support on this and I want to be around support. And so I just like really leaned into that. So she supported me for like another day or two. And then I moved to the apartment I was staying in Tel Aviv because I was doing it in Herzliya, which was closer
yep.
there. And I would do it differently. A little bit I would do it differently, but I will say I try to have somebody at first. I was like, okay, I'm going to line up people that can come over and do the shots for me. So like I tried to get my sister's friend who was a nurse, but it didn't work. And I tried to get this other woman who I heard was a nurse. And then like I just tried to find those people. And then I was like, and someone's like, you could come to my apartment. And I was like, and you got to keep the medicines refrigerated. You got to do it
Yep.
at the right
Yep.
time. There's like so many pieces to it. And so I was like, okay, hold on. Wait a second. Like, why am I really trying to do this? I, I want to feel really great in this process. I don't need someone just to come over to do it. Oh, and my first night in Tel Aviv, my one of my best friends, Tamar, who is a doctor, came out of her way at her after her like a dinner with friends and drove into Tel Aviv and
Wow.
literally double parked her car downstairs, ran upstairs, helped me with the shots, did them for me,
Wow.
and then I literally walked her downstairs and she left.
Wow.
Like, oh, so it's such
Amazing.
so amazing.
Amazing.
So I really was, I really did. The shots were hard. Then I had to make a shift because this person that said they would come couldn't come. My friend Alana, also, you can see I resourced a lot of people. I had her on FaceTime with me, and she was so patient and wonderful. And she was just like, am I doing it right? Am I doing this right? And she's like, yeah, you're great. You're great. And I started icing my stomach before. That was like a big tip that I got. So like to kind of like numb the space. And then what I started doing, and I did this even when other people were doing the shots, I would I would take a little bit of time to visualize and imagine that this liquid was like liquid gold. I was like, this is liquid gold entering my system and like supporting this growth. And I just kind of created this vision of like what this, and the needle is part of this like vessel that's
Wow.
helping the liquid gold get into my body. So I kind of just started shifting my energy around them so that the enemy isn't the needle, the enemy isn't this medicine that then hurts a little bit. And I just started creating that. I wake up every day and I put my hands on my stomach and I would just be like, you guys are doing great and you are loved and
Wow.
you matter. I was like, if these become my future children, I want them to feel like they matter, like they're worthy, like they're special beings from potential. So that I would do in the morning. And then before the shots, I would also just like breathe into it and be like, okay, here we go, liquid gold. And then I would do the shots and I would repeat blessings as they would go in. I'd be like, blessings, blessings, blessings. My friend David Yard always says, blessings, blessings. I just like put that energy as it was going in and really direct my energy toward how I wanted it to be. And that helped me shift.
And did you, I mean, it's just like just hearing this. I mean, it's incredible, right? What mindset can do and really like can flip something that's so scary and isolating and into something that is just filled with joy and potential. I mean, it just I'm using your words
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Um, were you did you have any side beyond like the medication in
Oh,
the
yes.
beginning making you really sick? Did you have any side effects from the medicine and how did you manage that piece
Yeah.
of it?
Yeah. I'll tell you, I mostly did not, and I thought I would. The one thing I had is on like one of the days, like kind of a little bit further in, I was exhausted and I kind of just like stayed in bed and was pretty tired.
Yep.
So I definitely had there was definitely emotional impact and physical impact afterwards. Like the recovery, I don't feel like I was told enough about that process beforehand.
Okay,
But during it, I was like, okay, so I might have side effects. Okay, so I might feel this. And I actually felt great
great,
during it. And I
amazing,
did acupuncture also while I was doing it. And so I was doing that throughout my time with my shots also. Yeah.
amazing, amazing. Okay, so now, like, thinking back on the process, and sort of, it's been a few months since you've been finished with the process. What would you like? What would you say to someone who was considering this, who, like, in terms of everything that you've been through, advice that you would give to someone else? And on the flip side, what I would also say is, what would you say to all the people out there who, like, don't know so much about this process, but hear that someone in their life is going through that, or considering going through it? What advice would you give to them as they need now to support someone who's dealing with this?
Okay. So those are a few different ones. Number one, for anyone that's considering it, I'm just going to start there because I wish I was just um, kind of empowered earlier to look into it and kind of do some of the initial blood work that we mentioned earlier and just like know where, because we were like, oh, it's an age thing. Like it's actually not. Everyone's bodies are really different, and just know your baseline for what you're dealing with. Like I honestly wish that in my late 20s I just kind of just got a knowing. I think it's great for us to know what our ovarian reserves are, what our average, egg count is, and just like kind of track that and know that so you can make a choice for your body and not for like what's happening out there. So that's on a considering front. I think just like we need to be talking about this a
Yep.
lot more and talking about it with people. So I'll just like talk about it with anyone that wants to. For people that are going through it, like you're saying people going through it. How can you maybe
Yeah.
support those people? Yeah, I think it. That's a great question. I,
I think, but from an emotional standpoint, and, like, I think there's this. I mean, this, that there's this idea that, oh, nebuch, you're freezing your eggs, right? Like,
oh,
oh, you're at that point where you're like, you've, quote, given up,
oh,
and now you're freezing your eggs.
oh,
Like, from that standpoint, like from the emotional standpoint of, like, the like, oh, the like
mm,
the head tilt of, but also
yeah.
just like actual practically, like, someone in your life is dealing with this. How can we support them? Like, what would you say?
Yeah, yeah. Number one, it doesn't feel like giving up at all. It feels like, there was this like period where I was like grieving some and a reality that I thought I wanted, that I wasn't in. Um, but boy, like I think it's so empowering um to take this on and to know, like, by the way, I have friends that are married that have frozen embryos just in case and have kids and haven't had any fertility issues, but just in case they want to have kids and maybe later down the line they might not be, whatever the issue. It's like we just never know, and it feels like a really powerful choice. So I just kind of want to like flip that. And so if someone comes to you with that energy, I would say just like getting to share where you're at, continuing to come back to your why and just show up in the energy of like, actually this feels like a really powerful choice that I'm really proud of, and I'm excited to invest in my future in this way. Like just like really meet them with a different energy and say like, you might not know this perspective, or this might be a new perspective, but actually I'm investing in my future family like this, and it feels actually like the opposite of giving up, right? So that's like one potential. And then in terms of supporting people that are going through it, like recently, like I knew someone going through it and I asked them what their favorite snacks were and I dropped it off. Or, you offering to make a meal and it being, and just like dropping it off by their house, not needing to see
Yeah.
them. In Israel, they have an amazing organization. I think it's called like something Hana. I forgot exactly what it's called, but you can anonymously sign up for meals and people will just drop it by your
Wow.
door in the community. They don't know who you are and you don't know who they are, so that
Wow.
it stays like in from a confidentiality standpoint. But anyone that's going through anything in this fertility arena, a friend of mine in Israel told me about it. And like for like a few days afterwards, when I was like struggling to kind of like get out of bed, and I knew that I had food
Yep.
like coming, and I also had friends that like just like ordered me food, and I had like my family from Chicago like sent me food, and I just like had like people were just like offering to order me things, and would and brought me things and
Amazing.
offered to come and visit, and I just said yes when it felt good. But
Yeah.
I just so I would say that, so if from supporting people and asking them, like, instead of saying what do you need, I would offer like, I could come and visit, I can drop off food, like say yes to one of these things,
Yep.
I could drop off your favorite ice cream, we can eat it together, you can eat it on your own,
Right.
all are possible. So instead of asking for a wide range, maybe giving them a few options, I think that might be supportive for people. And what was your other question that you asked?
I mean, that
Anything?
yeah, those were the two questions. I mean,
Okay.
my other last question. Oh yeah, go ahead. You want to say
No,
something
I
else?
remember you said something like, what would I do
Yeah,
differently? Is
yeah,
that what you
yeah, yeah. But
Um, yeah, I just think that like I um would have I would have recovery. I think I would have uh lined up a little bit more support beforehand for the recovery process. Um, and yeah, I just had a little bit more like local support already lined up. I would say that was probably something I would do differently. Um, that's probably what I would do differently.
okay.
Yeah.
I and in closing, this, first of all, I just really obviously need to thank you for being so open about this process and sharing all of these pieces with us. But as you think back and how the world has changed now and people are talking about it, look, you and I are having this conversation right now, right?
Yeah.
Um, there, I think that the things, can you give people practically, I mean, you mentioned some of the pieces that you did for yourself, like things that helped you emotionally, things that helped you physically. You mentioned the acupuncture, you mentioned the visualization, like what can you, for someone who like just is starting out on this process and really trying to like do the best thing for themselves to try to get through it, as someone who thinks deeply and spiritually, that's your practice,
Yeah.
your business is, mind, body, and connecting and spirituality. What would you recommend for someone who's going through this kind of fertility struggle, or really any kind of fertility struggle? Like, what do you recommend to people to get through this kind of thing?
At which point?
At any point, like when you know that you're about to embark upon something, you don't
Okay.
know what's going to happen, and you're worried, and the hope is that you're going to end up with a baby in your arms. You're
Right.
not really sure,
Right.
but that's what you hope. And there's a lot of fear to get from here to there, and a lot of steps to get from here to there. Give us like one tip that you share with your clients about like how
Mm.
people can work through some pieces of pain that they're dealing with in regard to fertility stuff.
Okay. Beautiful. Okay.
I know I'm putting you on the spot.
No, it's great. It's beautiful. I want to say two things. The first is, I would say, resource yourself with people, and I just like turn to people and share your vulnerability. And whether it's like people that can relate to you in this way, or like loved ones or friends in your life, either kind of like finding either of those. I would say number one, don't keep it in, don't keep it to yourself. It's so relatable. So many people are experiencing it. And when you have a network and a community of people, just like the you get to share the pain with others, and it doesn't feel so isolating. So I would
Yep.
say that's first of all. And then in terms of what you can do on your own, would say be honest about what it is that you're feeling and give yourself like a set container of time. So it's really important of like whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour to say like I'm going to feel in this amount of time whatever it is that that feeling is. And you could set it up with candles or music or journal or whatever. You go to a park and you're like, okay, I'm going to set my timer and I'm going to allow myself. And what that does is it allows you, for those that might be scared, to go into a certain feeling. By the way, it could also be a joyful feeling. It doesn't have to be just be a challenging one, depending on what's happening. Um, Knowing that when you set up like a structure around it and you know that it's safe in this container to allow yourself to fully feel that, and then when the time is up, okay, you know that now you can put it aside and keep moving on and doing whatever you're doing, and you can do that every single day if that is something that really serves, and it allows for that space and for that thing to really be felt. I would say that that's definitely one tip. And I would say the other is creative outlets. Like I would say that like allowing yourself, whether it's like painting, collaging, watercolor, if it's something you do or not do, something that calls you, um, going into the water if you're near a body of water, taking a walk, like just immersing yourself in something that it gets you out of your head and into your body, and dance if that feels good, and just like allowing yourself to move, allow whatever things to move through you without you needing to do so much of the thinking. I would definitely recommend carving out some time to do that.
I love that. I love both of those. And they're so, I mean, these are things that people talk about all the time, feeling the feelings. But if it's so big, I love the fact that, your idea about holding it in a certain time in that container, as you said, and letting yourself feel, letting yourself experience, letting yourself be and express as necessary. Nasya, I am so grateful to you for your vulnerability, for your honesty, for your rawness here. It is, look, I was at a conference today and there were a number of single women who I came across and just people talking to me about how it's so important that we're having these discussions because people are like there's so many people in our community that are grappling with these issues and really wanting to know that they're not alone and that they are supported in whatever way, whatever the choices that they're making, that they're supported, and to know other people that have gone through the process
Yeah.
is extremely helpful for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah,
So
and I will
thank
say,
you.
yeah, for anyone listening or for anyone that watches this on replay, I'm happy to answer any questions. We didn't even get into like the recovery and the after and things like that, which is just like needs a lot of attention and to talk about. So if anyone has any questions, if you're considering it or you know someone in your life that's going through this, I'm happy to support anyone in this process.
Macy, you're amazing. Thank you
Thank
so,
you.
so much. I will tag her and everyone can reach out to her afterwards. We will link her when we put this up in our podcast.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everybody.
You too.
Okay, bye
Bye.
bye.